Welcome back. In this video, we're just going to quickly go over how to use SSH to log into or connect to a terminal on a remote server or machine. And you can do this even with the machine you have at home, as long as you can set up either a static IP address that you can connect to, or there are services that allow you to do that. I'm not going to get into that too much, but the idea is any machine that can support SSH in any way, which can be your MacBook, can be any Linux computer you have, and even Windows computers, although I'm not sure how that would work. But as long as you can run SSH as a service on any machine, you're also able to SSH into said machine and just work with the terminal in that machine. So in previous videos, I was attached to Hostium. I was attached to a server named Hostium, but now I've logged out and I'm actually in my MacBook. What I'm going to do is try to SSH to a remote server. Now, the way you would do that is typing the command SSH and then a username, your username on the target that you're trying to connect to, @, and then either an address or IP address to that machine. Again, whenever you want to SSH somewhere, whoever is giving you access will either give you an address that you would SSH to or an IP address. So that is just going to be another argument. At the minimum, they should give you a username and an IP address or just a domain name that is the that has the record for that IP address, basically. So the domain name is actually used to find the IP address. And this is just the basic command that you would be typing. A couple of arguments to be familiar with. One is -v, which will give you a verbose output of the procedure. If your initial SSH fails and you can't connect for any reason, -v will give you a verbose log of what it's trying to do. And it's good because you will be able to identify the problem quicker. But that's just the basics. And it doesn't need to be this complicated. It can be as easy as typing in SSH and then any name you desire. So you can just alias all this information and all these settings. And that's again done with something that we already saw previously, which is with SSH configs. Now, I've already cleaned this up a little bit just to make it suitable for viewing, but this is the basic idea. The host name that you end up setting up here is just going to be your alias. So it's going to be host, whatever alias you want to set. And you can also use wildcards, meaning you can set up a pattern to simplify names because there might be a pattern in the names for the servers you're connecting to. However, it's sometimes not a good idea to use those. I'll just include a link in the description to basically setting up SSH forwarding and wildcards and all of that. You can find those on GitHub Docs. There's actually pretty good documentation on these. But in this case, I'm just setting up a host named Hostium, and then I can specify, again, the same domain name or server address, IP address, anything like that right here. And then I'll just specify my username on the target server, and then identity file. We already saw this earlier in the previous video. It's just the path to whatever SSH key you're going to be using for this particular server. And there's also a new option, identities only, and we're setting that to yes, meaning we never want to try and authenticate with a password. There might be even some services that only give you access through SSH and not through a username and password. So it's actually useful to just set this option to even prevent SSH from trying to authenticate with a password, but it will usually try keys first, then if all else fails, password. And then there's also add keys to agent, again, for the purpose of keeping that authorization, that unlocking open for a specific period of time. So I'm actually just going to quit this and try to. So now I'm going to basically try and SSH into Hostium. I'm going to get a bit of a warning first because I still haven't set up my environment completely here, but this is basically what you would get. I'm actually going to disconnect, clear, And this time I'm just going to try and connect to Hostium uh, and specify that I want to use bash and not Z shell. Again, this goes back to the first video that you can use different shells, and the default is bash, but I'm trying to use Z shell without actually having configured it on the server in the first place. So I'll just manually specify that I'm trying to use bash, but you probably don't need to do that. And now I'm just logged into the server, and now you can see I'm very clearly on a different server. And again, there's other ways to figure out that you're actually SSH. Like one identifier is that you're very unlikely to get the same prefix in your command line when you're SSH into a server compared to your own computer. It usually contains the host name. You can type in echo uh, host name. This is just running the hostname command. And you can just use uname to get the server information just to make sure that you're actually SSH'd. And one last thought that I want to talk about is how to do this from Windows. Again, use WSL, but if you don't want to use WSL, there's also a client on Windows called Putty, and it's spelled Putty. I'm not sure if I'm doing it exactly right, but Putty, as long as I remember, while I was still using Windows years ago, was one of the defaults clients that you could install on Windows and use to SSH. But again, use WSL just to just not have to deal with any of that. Another thing to note is that SSH is just a process. So there's a process on my MacBook right now that's connected to this machine, and on this machine, it's also starting a bash process. However, if my connection drops for more than a few seconds, or if I turn my computer off or I close my terminal, anything like that, anything that would cause the SSH connection to drop, the process is going to be killed on both machines, meaning the SSH process on my computer is going to be killed, even if I close my terminal without my terminal keeping a session. And the bash process is going to be killed on the Linux machine that I'm connected to, which means even if I open, I don't know, open Vim, for instance, right now, the Vim process is a child process of the bash process that I had. So all of these processes, the entire tree of processes are going to be killed if my connection were to drop or if I close my terminal. And you usually don't want this. You don't want to lose your progress on a machine that you're connected to, right? It's very silly to lose all of this. So the way to keep persistent sessions is usually with is usually with a program that keeps a persistent terminal session. Now I use tmux, and there's other tools that would basically do the same thing for you, but the reason I use tmux, which stands for terminal multiplexer, I can actually look whether it exists or not, and it does. And again, it's pretty easy to install on both Mac and Linux. The reason why you would want to use tmux, one of them is that it creates a process that's persistent, meaning if I start tmux right now, and it's again trying to use Z shell, which I won't worry about, so you can see it actually prints out a bar below, which is one way you can is one way for you to know that you're actually in tmux. The good thing about tmux is that it's a persistent session, meaning if my connection were to drop for any reason, my tmux session would stay here. Let's actually try this out. Let me try and, I don't know, echo something. Hey, this is my tmux session. And that's basically all I have to do. And now let me try disconnecting, and I'm just going to use shortcuts for all of that. So I dropped my connection right now, and now I'm going to try and SSH back in. I'm back in, my previous processes are gone. You can see my terminal, I'm not seeing the outputs from my previous terminal, right? That process is gone. But if I run tmux ls, I can see that I have a tmux window that I opened on this date and time, and it's still there. You can reattach to it. So it's tmux attach -t, and I'm attaching to session 0. And there we go. I still have my work there. I can even, I don't know, open up Vim. It works out perfectly everywhere. I can have multiple windows open. Again, I'm just going to have to skip this. Echo something. It's very flexible. You can have multiple windows. You can have multiple sessions. So the hierarchy is like this. You have tmux sessions that are a set of windows, and each window can be comprised of multiple panes. And I don't have any of my tmux config here, but we can do things like not be split, and it'll split your terminal in two, and it will give you two terminals at the same time, and you can switch back and forth between them. And you can do split H, I think, or I'm actually forgetting some of these because I use my own tmux shortcuts normally, so I'm not used to the default ones. But I believe if you want to split, you can split uh, -H. Split. Yes, you can do -H and -V for vertical and horizontal splits. So tmux is really useful for this type of stuff. And again, the best part is even if I just completely kill my session and then restart it, I can just do tmux attach and reattach to it, and I still have all of my work here. So tmux is really useful if you're going to be working outside the terminal, not just for keeping your progress, but also for, as the name suggests, multiplexing, for having more than just one terminal and being really flexible, and it just boosts your productivity. And I'm going to do another video following this that shows just my entire setup. So it goes from my Vim setup to my tmux setup to my Z-shell setup. And I'm just going to go over those. I can't really explain all of it because one, it would take up a lot of time, and two, I can't even explain all of it really well. So I'll just leave learning how tmux works, how Vim works, and how SSH works to you. And this is just to give you an idea and really help you just get through CS322. But if you're interested to learn more, feel free to Google or feel free to ask me if you are interested in learning more. And I'll just stop this video here. Thanks for watching.